buying a business or selling their business, and we just absolutely love that. Our whole mission at Strategy Leaders is all about seeing companies continue successfully from one generation to the next, and anything that we can do to help make that happen is what really lights our fire here. Today, in terms of today's webinars, we're going to look at the SMB role in our economy. So SMBs are small to mid-sized businesses, classically defined as usually either under 300 employees or under 500 employees, depending on who you're talking to. We're going to look at current buy-sell conditions, both impacted by COVID and in general. We're going to look at exit challenges that most businesses run into. We're going to talk about how to prepare for exit. And then we're going to get to a recap of the to-dos for you to work on. If you have any questions as we go along today, Robin and Dahlia are going to be monitoring the Q&A and chat box. So feel free to type in your questions and ask them anything that you'd like to get answered, and we'll get to it and address it. I also do want to give everyone as a thank you for attending today some offers. You can put a request in with your email in the chat window and let us know what you want, or if you want to keep your email private, you can email us, Andi@strategyleaders.com, and Robin, I believe, has put her email into the chat box as well, so you can also just grab her email and send a request to her as well. We're offering you a copy of an exit planning timeline that lays out a myriad of activities that you need to be working on over a period of time and gives you a chart of when to be working on each and how they all fit together, which can be a great planning tool. Our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, June 8th, and it's all about valuations and case studies on how businesses played out in the sale transaction. So it'll be very much a workbook kind of activity. And then May is valuation month, and we're offering 30% off of any valuation done in May 2021. So this gives you an opportunity to get a valuation done at well below market price, under $2,000. And we would encourage everyone in the audience to think about getting a baseline established for the business, whether you're planning to sell now or sell later. For those of you who've been to other webinars and you've seen these important stats about the role of SMBs in the U.S. economy, this is something that we are always advocating for, is the importance of small to medium-sized businesses. I'm very pleased that economically we're not making the same mistakes that we made after 2001 and 2008, where we did not focus a lot of time and attention from a federal level on how to preserve, protect small to medium-sized businesses. This time we've got a lot of resources available for businesses, and hopefully we'll avoid the problems that we've had in previous economic downturns of too many people on unemployment, too many businesses failing, fall off in the tax base, the challenges of people using social resources and how to fund those, and clearly a lot of mental health issues in the economy that we just don't want to deal with or see because we've got people who unfairly are out of work. So as you look at these stats, I encourage you to become an advocate of small business. Talk with your representatives, state, local, federal, and make sure that they understand you see small businesses as important and stand behind the importance of helping them to be successful. There are roughly around 5 to 6 million closely held businesses, closely held companies operating in the United States. And we do see a huge amount of vulnerability, churn, and waste in this category, as nearly 3 out of 4 of these companies get replaced in every 10-year cycle. Yep, that's right. 3 out of 4 come and go in every 10-year cycle. And that doesn't matter how many 10-year cycles they've been through, they continue to fail or drop off at the same rate. We do see a huge potential for small businesses to contribute to our country's overall economic well-being. We also see significant lost opportunity both during ownership and at the time of exit. And that translates into owners who work harder than necessary, make less than they can, and consequently leave a lot on the table at the time of exit. This failure rate of 3 out of 4 is something that we on strategy leaders are on a mission to change. And our results over 25 years in the companies we've worked with is we've been able to flip the stats from 3 out of 4 fail to 3 out of 4 succeed in every 10-year cycle. So now let's shift gears and talk about current SMB buy and sell conditions. COVID stress certainly threw a monkey wrench in the works for a lot of people. There were lots of folks coming into 2020 thinking they might sell, and then they had their plans set aside as markets hit turbulence, and also buyers put on the brakes as they were unclear as to who would be likely to make it through COVID and who might not. One of the most interesting pieces of data that I've seen most recently is that in a survey in April this month, 70% of respondents reported that they, as business owners, will again be out of money by June 2021 without more help. So that's a real cautionary tale here. There are certainly more challenges to come that have to get dealt with. About 30% of the market of business owners don't even expect their sales to come back and their client base to come back to normal until 2022. Most small businesses have a need to repair the business and personal finances that have been stressed through this period. There is limited access to bank and leasing capital to bridge gaps, which happens all the time when we have economic downturns. And then finally, the PPP bailouts we think are going to be pretty much done, and the remaining funding is likely to come from debt transactions. So for those of you who may not be aware, the EIDL program was the first program out. It was the ability to take a loan at low interest over 30 years. It got capped at 150,000. That cap cap at 150,000 of money available per company, and also a maximum of 6 months of gross profit. That cap has now been raised to 24 months of gross profit, and the cap is now at $500,000 available. And there is talk of raising the cap further to $2 million. Any of you who get emails from SBA.gov about an EIDL program, it's not spam. SBA.gov is the legit email address for the federal government. Go take a look at it. They are coming back to everyone who got an EIDL loan originally and asking if you'd be interested in an additional loan amount. And with that said, as we come through this now, a lot of business owners that we're talking to are facing uncertainty. What do I do next? If I was able to pivot, will my pivot hold up? If I wasn't able to pivot, will my business come back? And how hard do I want to fight for the business? With that, Robin, let's go ahead and bring up the next poll question and get an idea of who's in our audience. So we have the majority of our audience, great, is business owners. And for those, it's actually almost equally split between baby boomers and Gen X and some millennials in the audience. So that's actually pretty interesting to me, that actually mirrors the results that I'm about to show you. So let's take a look at who's in the market, and you can take those results down, Robin. So there is nearly 2.5 million businesses that are known to be owned by baby boomers. This is the group that is now talking about retirement for the most part. They're done buying. They're now preparing for exit. There's another 2.5 million that are known to be owned by Gen Xers. So These businesses are in full swing, but what's interesting is they're also starting to slow down as acquirers. So if they wanted to be entrepreneurs, they've gotten in for the most part. Now they're learning they're working on managing those businesses. And then finally, there's about 1 million businesses already owned by millennials. They're age 25 to 40, and this is a group we call just getting started. When you look at current buy-sell conditions, one of the things that we do see for those who are looking to sell, they are primarily the baby boomers, and they're going to have to watch out because they're on the wrong side of a supply-demand curve. So here is the supply, the number of businesses coming on the market. Here's the demand, the number of buyers coming into the market. Here's the years 210, 223, and on out into the future. And the problem is that the baby boomers, for the most part, have stopped buying. So they've dropped out of the demand curve, but they are adding to the supply curve as they're looking to unload the businesses that they own. The Gen Xers have passed their peak buying numbers, so they may not be adding a lot to the supply curve, but in terms of demand, they're slowing down in terms of their desire to purchase. And they also were a smaller birth rate group to begin with. And then we have the millennials that we're looking for them to grow the financial muscle. Hitting 40 years old, they're starting to hit that range where they can be very active buyers and they've got the resources to do that. But the thing that I want to caution everyone who's looking at selling in the next few years is this widening gap between supply and demand. And when that happens, as a seller, you're on the wrong side of the curve and you may have to make some sacrifices. So, Robin, why don't you bring up the next poll question?
Sure, no problem.
Let's just take a look at some issues that impact the business. Now, when we start working on change, the human brain actually works with what are the problems I'm facing, what are the things I don't like, and then it shifts to what I do like. And so we're going to take that same methodology here, and we're going to start with what are the problems you're facing in the business that you think you're going to have to fix in order to be successful selling. And go ahead and check as many as you think apply to your business. So as a seller, you got to be looking at how can I deliver a business that's problem free? And as a buyer, you've got to look at how many challenges am I willing to take on? And how am I going to be able to overcome those challenges? Is it going to be worth the difficulty? And as you look at these challenges, do we need to give everybody another minute, Robin, or can we take this down?
No, we should leave it up.
Okay, so I'm going to leave this up for a minute, and you'll be able to get into this next slide in another minute or two. But there are some real discrepancies between who might actually buy the business. And when we ask all business owners about their long-term plans for the business, about 10% say that they plan to sell the business to a competitor. In reality, you can't see the number behind this yet. You'll get to it in a minute. In reality, about 10% of all businesses that are sold do get sold to competitors. So that's actually kind of a match in there. It might flip up who intended to and actually pulled it off, but the population numbers work. Then there's another group of sellers who expect to sell to outsiders. So not competitors, but just general outsiders. And interestingly enough, when we ask business owners, only about 10% expect to sell to outsiders. And the reality is, however, that about 10% of all businesses do get sold to outsiders. So again, might flip around who's in which category, but the numbers work out. This next category is the first one that causes some real concern, however. About 50% of business owners report that they plan to sell the business to family members. And in reality, only about 15% actually get to the next generation. And then from second to third generation, only about 5% pull it off. And there was a very interesting survey done last year with second generation family members, and they asked the kids, would you rather buy the have the business or have the money coming from selling the business? And 70% of the kids said, I'd rather have the money. And I'm sure that it's been a stressful 10 years, from 2008 to 18. And I'm sure that a lot of kids sat at the dinner table and watched the stress their parents were going through and thought, do I really want or need these headaches? There's 30% of business owners who report that they plan to sell the business to their employees, but in reality, only about 5% actually pull it off. So, with that in mind, Robin, can we pull this slide down, or this questionnaire down now?
Yep, no problem.
Okay, great. So as you look at these numbers, there's still some more numbers to account for. First of all, about 20% of business owners just make the decision to keep going. There's no clear path to exit. I'll just keep operating. I'm making money, or I'm not making money, but it's providing me a living. I don't know what else to do with it, so we'll just keep going. And then about 40% of business owners make the decision that they're going to close up and they liquidate the business. It can happen with successful businesses that take a hard turn. It can happen with businesses that never really built the underlying value to drive a sale. It can happen with business owners who get disgusted and say, I'm done with it. I'll walk it away. Whatever the reason, what happens in this last group, close and liquidate, is that all that sweat equity, all that knowledge, all that effort that the business owner put in goes to zero when the business owner walks away, or may actually go negative if there are liabilities that have to be cleaned up. That's what we don't want to have happen for our business owners. Okay, so we just talked about 40% of business owners not monetizing their sweat equity. Let's turn the discussion to what every business owner needs to be thinking about. And it's really all about personal wealth and getting a clear factual calculation. Look at your retirement. How much do you need to make, and what are your sources? Most business owners have three sources that they will bring into retirement. One is any retirement funds or savings accounts. One is the value of their home, and one is the value of their business. We find that most business owners, if you are going to get what they want out of this business, out of the business, the house, the retirement savings, and transfer to a retirement that they're going to be happy with, they're going to have to really understand the facts of where they are. If there's a shortfall, so I need more money in retirement than I'm likely to get from my assets, don't expect anyone else to solve your personal retirement issues. So somebody's not going to write you an extra check just because you said it's not enough. You're going to have to define your timeline from now to exit and figure out what it is that you're going to have to do to get from here to there to have the value you want, or how you're going to adjust your expectations for retirement. So it's interesting to note that around 10,000 people a day are retiring. And that's a huge number. A lot of it is the majority of it is the baby boomers, and a lot of those were business owners. And as I said earlier, most business owners have 2 to 3 great assets, personal savings and retirement plans if they have them, the value of their house, and the value of their business. And I would say that most business owners are pretty clear about the value of the house and the value of the savings, but not necessarily so clear about the sale value of the business. And part of that is because most business owners don't really think of retiring as strategy. They often emotionally think of retiring as giving up on the business. So they've been so engaged with driving that business forward, it feels like somehow they're quitting on the business when they pull out. I will say 40% of business owners in general say they have no retirement savings outside of the business. And that has certainly been stressed in this or become a bigger problem in the last year as business owners have put money into their businesses to keep going. As I said, most business owners lack a clear understanding of the real exit value of their business. They go on urban legend, they go on what somebody else transacted their business for without getting the facts for themselves. There is a competition for scarce buyers, as I said earlier, that you've got to be aware of. About 75% of business owners don't have written transferable operating plans. So the buyer coming in wants a roadmap. How am I going to run this business? How does it work? Who reports to whom? How do you get stuff done? How do you measure and manage? And 90% of business owners have not developed a written exit strategy, and they have not practiced how to build exit skill, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So this slide, Robin, let's come back and look at the poll answers from the group. On this slide, this came from our last webinar about growing successful businesses. And we brought it back here because so many of these issues, the ones that we highlighted in yellow, are issues that we find to become root causes in terms of creating challenges to getting what you want out of the business at exit. And it's interesting, though the biggest category here, the business, is owner dependent. And that there's actually a reason why that happens. So in order to get into the business as an owner, you've got to have drive and ambition. I'm in it, I'm on it, I'll make it happen, I'll do what has to be done. But those skills are 180 degrees away from what you have to build, what you have to do to build a long-term surviving, thriving company, which is you got to get out of the way. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Second biggest category, lack of exit strategy. So we're preaching to the choir here. And and then the lack of plans. So how are you going to transfer the roadmap of the business to someone else? So good information here. Robin, why don't you go to the next poll, and let's bring that one up. And so given that you recognize there are some challenges, how much time do you need in order to do a great job at selling the business? Do you need an extra, if all things were equal, do you need an extra year, an extra 2 to 3 years, an extra 4 to 5 years? How many of you are ready to sell now? And then there may be some of you that doesn't apply to at all, but we'd like to know kind of where the you fit in on this equation. And as we look at that, I want to emphasize that if you think that you can buy yourself time, there's going to be a lot to do. That's what we're going to go and look at next. And we're happy to get you some tools, whether it's an exit planning timeline, the next valuation webinar, which might be very useful to you, or getting your own valuation done so you've got a baseline. So Robin, can we take this one down?
Yep.
Okay, great. So if you do want to take advantage of any of these offers, as I said earlier, put your request into the chat window or email us or grab Robin's email out of the chat window and send her an email, and we'll be happy to get stuff to you. So now let's go right into the meat of this and getting your house in order. When you think about things that could be done to prepare for a successful exit, here's a bunch of issues that you want, or topics that you want to consider. Do I have a working plan? If I don't, how am I going to get one built? How am I going to engage my employees in building that plan? So it's not just me, but it's a well-rounded look at the business. How profitable is the company, and how does that compare to the expectations for our industry? Do I need to be more profitable, and what can I do to do that? That's going to pay off in a lot of value, because it is going to get you both more bottom line money between now and the time you exit, and then a higher payout when you do exit. How are debts going to be paid off? So boost the net income. You've got more money to pay off debts. That's a good thing. And you want to pay off all of your debts during the operation of the company, rather than having to take it out of the retirement money that you're supposedly getting from the sale. What about tax planning? So how well do you understand the real tax implications of selling a business? And we're going to dig into that a little bit more in a couple of minutes. Can we live on what we'll get? This is a family conversation. This is a spouse conversation. Whoever you're going to retire with, you need to be talking about this, and you need to get agreement. It's enough, it's not enough, and what are we going to do about it? Once you've been through this list of questions, then you get to the ultimate question, which is going through the pros and cons. Do we go now or do we need to delay? So Robin, let's take a look at the answers to the question, the last poll question. So interesting, 16% of you think you're ready to go now. That's great. And then 20% an extra year, 30% an extra 2 to 3 years, and 20% would love to have 4 to 5 years to go. So that's great information here. You can take that down, Robin. And as you look at the time to sale, we would advise you that 1 year or less is very risky. You've got to move really fast to get everything ready. 3 years, it's doable, but you got to get moving. 5 years is ideal. And we have seen a lot of business owners that put themselves in that 1 year. We've got to move quickly. They've run out of time for some reason. They try to rush things and then they don't get the sale done, or they sell well below market. So I would be very cautious about that first group. So things you want to be thinking about is, what is it going to take to rebuild coming out of COVID, and keep going? How hard do I want to, or should I fight for the business? How much energy personal do I have left, and how much resources left in the company to fight, and to engage in order to get where we want to go? And I suspect that that may very well be driving that thought process for those of you who are in the 3 to 5 year bucket, is I can do better in a couple of years than I can right now. Now, for those of you that can buy time, we're going to start there. Let the baby grow up is the first thing we always talk about. You want to build a sustainable company. And this is the advice column here. You want to think about helping to make sure that you've built a valuable, sustainable company by building self-sufficient, accountable teams who can run the business. You test it by taking vacations and getting out of the way. So can you remove yourself from the business? That doesn't mean go away and take your laptop and your cell phone with you. It means leave those things behind. Stay out of it and let the rest of the team run the company. You're going to have to invest in training so that everybody in the company is getting better every year, increasing performance, improving quality, increasing output. And clearly you want to assemble one team. They want to have a common set of goals. Everybody's pointed in the same direction. You've got open reporting and you've got shared wins. The next thing to think about as you're looking to prepare for exit, and again, the last slide, this is the stuff we talk with our clients about all day long. Get strong on 6 platforms. So we consider the 6 platforms: sales, finance, marketing, operations, human resources, and real importantly, leadership. As you get ready for sale, you're going to want to promote what's best, but you're also going to want to be very honest about the rest, because any buyer is going to find out about the weaknesses anyway as they dig in through due diligence. So you want to build teams, test tools, and clearly demonstrate the company's value. Love to help you with that if any of you are looking for help. You want to have expertise in each discipline. You want to have a plan for up markets and down markets. So that's something that hurt a lot of companies. They came into COVID with an up market plan and didn't have the shift plan to go to a down market and respond quickly. You want bulletproof numbers. I have seen time and time again where a company has gotten a very nice offer from a buyer only to go through due diligence and get nitpicked to death. That's not what we want to have happen for you. We want bulletproof numbers. There is no getting around what the original offer was. The original offer stands. As a company, you want to build an outstanding client portfolio. So you want great clients who get what you do, they get the value, they're willing to pay a premium for it. This is what a buyer would love to get their hands on. And also on the employee side, same thing. Great, accountable, driven, motivated employees. And you want to be sure to put golden handcuffs on those people so that they do stick around through the sale transaction. And they have a motivation to do that causes them to not bolt and run at the first sound of maybe this company's going up for sale. And then finally, you want to build 2 5-year growth plans. Even if you have to look retrospectively and cobble together some of that previous 5-year plan, get it down on paper. What you want to do is show a buyer, we've completed one plan. Here's our evidence of performance over the last 5 years. And then here's the next 5-year plan. They're consistent. They show a theme. Here's the process, what we're going forward with. And this portfolio of buyer plans then is something that demonstrates the value and builds confidence with a future buyer. There are some strategic questions that I would encourage you to ask. You guys can read through this, and I'm going to tell you a couple stories. So I have one client, they're in their 40s. They've already started working on their exit plan, which they don't expect to happen for another 10 to 15 years. Why? Because they are determined to build value in the company that will benefit them personally, will benefit their employees, and that will ultimately demonstrate the value of the company. And they want to do it a little bit at a time. They're going to have a really well-rounded, successful company when they get done. In terms of legacy motivation, this is a motivation for a lot of buyers, whether it's first generation and I don't have family members, but I am proud of what I built. I'm proud of my customers. I want to see them continue to get served as the next set of buyers takes over. To family members, mom and dad want to see the kids come in and be as successful as they were. There are oftentimes concern about what happens to employees if I sell. So we have a client right now who's joined with us because he is very concerned that he has a very loyal group of employees. He says, these people have made me wealthy. They've worked hard. They've contributed a lot. And yes, I've paid them well to get us here, but I want those people in the future to also have an opportunity to benefit from this sale, which means A, I've got to have a very valuable sale so I can share the wealth, and B, I've got to have a methodology for sharing that. And he's got a lot of options because he's got time. He could ESOP it, so he could sell it to the employees. He could sell it outside of an ESOP to the employees. He could sell it to outsiders and set up retirement plans for his employees. There's a lot of questions that he has yet to answer. Finding value buyers can really benefit you. We have a business owner that clearly found a value buyer. That is a company that absolutely wanted into the niche that they were in and was willing to pay a tremendous premium to get there. And again, things weren't going to disappear if the buyer took over. You've got, I think, a lot of owners do get caught between, do I stay or do I go? I'm making really good money each year. I'm not so comfortable with how to do this deal. I'm not sure I have some buyers that I could turn to, so I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Not the most successful strategy. We've had companies, business owners come forward, get through some of the assessments and go, you know what, I don't have enough assets assembled yet. I don't have any choice. I'm going to have to stay and play for a while. At least you know the answer. And then the most tax effective sale, we had one client that we would practically beg them to add a couple of advisors to the team, tax accountant, tax attorney specialists, because it was going to be a big sale. They were like, no, our accountant's good enough. We're fine. And they had a contracts attorney, but not a tax attorney. They didn't put things into a portfolio successfully enough. And they left a ton of money on the floor when they got done with the deal, way more than they needed to. So when you get ready to sell the business, if you are going to talk to the next generation, here are some questions you may want to go through with them and get them thinking about. And we've seen the spectrum of preparedness from, we've got family members who aren't in the business yet, to family members who are here but only working as employees, nowhere near emotionally, mentally, or financially prepared to back the company. We have to we've had a number of business owners where they've brought the kids in and they've treated them like owners from the beginning. They go to the banking meetings, they go to the negotiations, they're involved in the decision making and the planning of the business. They see the financials. They're responsible for making financial decisions. They're engaged in the sales activities of the business, and these are the kids or the employees, if you're doing it with employees rather than family members, these are the employees who are really prepared to take the business on. These are the one, that's how you want to do it. We do get into situations where mom or dad may not be ready to let go. There may be somebody in the family that's afraid they're going to be living on cat food if they give up that income stream year after year. That's got to get worked out. You got to talk your way through that. Other situations where mom and dad are ready to let go or forced to let go, and the kids, as I said earlier, aren't necessarily prepared or don't understand their role. You've got to work that out. And then obviously you've got to have the experts at the table ready to transact the sale for you. So to recap, we're going to head into the downside here now. You want to make sure that you've built a team that's going to help you get through a successful sale. And you want to do this at least a year running up into prior to the sale if you've got the time to do it. You want to make sure you've got financial planning on the team. You've got asset valuation support. This would be house, portfolio of savings, and the business valuation. You want to have buyer or seller guidance, depending on whether you're trying to buy or trying to sell. You want to make sure you've got negotiation leadership on the team. Do you have a strong negotiator who's actually able to do it collaboratively? So they're strong, but they can facilitate a deal and get it over the finish line. And then absolutely, absolutely, absolutely get attorneys and accountants for contracting the deal, for doing tax and estate planning advice. This may not be the same person that you've worked with day to day on the internal workings of your business, because tax, estate planning, and sale contracting are very, very different activities. And don't make the mistake and end up then having to watch the deal crater because you've got the wrong people at the table. Other things you can do to prepare. I love this first one. Do acquisitions if time allows. So get practice at how deals work by practicing buying other companies. And by this, I mean, do a big enough acquisition so you actually get some hands-on experience. It's not just the, I'll pay you a 10% commission for your customer list. It's more than that. It's how are you going to take over a portfolio of employees? How are you going to negotiate the deal? How well does your attorney do and your tax accountant do at guiding you through that transaction? Really get to test people out as you go through the exercise. It's a great way to practice. I'm just doing a time check. Okay, great. Define your personal retirement goals and needs. We talked about that a lot. Value your assets regularly. So regular check every year, every 2 years. Where do we stand? How does that fit with what we're going to need? Recruit the team of advisors that I talked about on the previous slide. Assess your company, strengths, weaknesses, and gaps. Do it yourself, ask your employees to do it, and then ask some outsiders to do it. They may be more critical than you are. And you want to really understand what you're working with and what you're going to have to fix. Research buyer options and the marketplace in general. How's the marketplace doing? Is it trending up? Is it trending down? What kinds of buyers are looking for what out there, and how does that match with what you have? Put together a company overview. So this would be your first piece of paper that you'd circulate. You can do it anonymously if you want. You ask your attorney, your accountant, or your seller advisor to circulate it on your behalf. And then define your ideal buyer and start to do introductions. So these are companies that I actually want to be on their radar. define the roles among your operating and acquisition team members. So you've got the team pulled together. Now start getting clear who's working on what. So operating would be the internals, and the acquisition team would be the externals. Make sure that everything you're doing is about maturing the company, making the numbers bulletproof. You want to figure out what exactly you want out of this deal. So what percent of the shares are you going to sell? How much money do you want up front? How much money are you going to put at risk? What's the time frame? You want to look at contract examples. Ask your attorney for examples of contracts, whether it's an initial offering statement, it's a letter of intent, it's a final contract of sale. Read some, see how the deals developed and what they look like and how they changed from one document to the next, so that you're not trying to do that the first time you're looking at your own company. And then define how much risk you're willing to trade for payout and set your minimums. So if you're willing to take a longer time frame in terms of payout, you're likely to get a larger promise of a payout, but it will be at risk. Things can go wrong. If you don't get the money up front, then things can happen over time. And how much risk are you willing to take with that? Get to know your buyers. So any of the buyers that are on your portfolio of ideal targets, you want to ask your accountant to dig into their D&B. You want to find out more about their client base. You want to know as much about them as they're going to want to know about you. So you can effectively pitch the deal, and so that you pitch the deal to someone that actually has the chops to and the wherewithal to get a deal done. Get clear about what you will or won't accept as negotiating behaviors. We have, again, if the buyer starts behaving in a way that's not successful, are you ready, willing, and able to walk away from the deal? Do ask for a walkaway or good faith fee. So you're going to spend a lot of time and money on time and effort on due diligence. If somebody has the ability to pull out, if they don't like what they see during some of the due diligence, then make sure that you get compensated for your time and effort. Define the rules of engagement in the letter of intent. Under what conditions can anybody walk away from the deal? Make sure that you're not enabling a future competitor by educating them about your business and then they walk away. Be prepared for that due diligence negotiate and the negotiation that goes with it. So it's going to be stressful. You're going to need people from your company prepared to answer questions, and you're going to have to answer with a lot of detail and a lot of facts. You're finally going to negotiate the sale contract. That's going to be the last step. I would encourage you to set up a celebration at the sale contract, bring a special pen, bring sparkling juice or champagne to celebrate with everyone, invite family members or people that have helped you get to the table. And then lastly, but not least, figure out what you're going to do next. So as a business owner, this is going to be a huge change from dedicating your life to the business to moving on to doing something else. You want to make sure that that transition actually is rewarding and valuable, whether it's you're going to travel, you're going to spend more time with your family, you're going to be able to pursue some hobbies or other interests, maybe you're even going to get into another business. But figure out what you're going to do next so that you have something to look forward to, something that gives your life purpose as you continue on. And lastly, one piece of advice: it is not what you think you can sell it for. It's how good is your buyer? Can they actually pay for the deal? How strong and profitable is your company? How well do you and your team negotiate? And then what do you keep from the sale proceeds? And if I had to say a checklist, these are the things I'm always watching. These 4 points are incredibly important for you on your checklist. Can I maximize on each of these points? With that, I'll come back one more time. So if you want to put a request in for an exit planning timeline, an invitation to the next webinar, and get evaluation done at a 30% discount so you can get it done for well under $2,000. It's a great deal. Establish a baseline for where you are with the business. Reminder, these are the kinds of things we work on. We'd love to have a conversation with you and talk with you and help you figure out what you need, whether it's us or somebody else. We're happy to help you figure that out. And with that, we're going to go to some questions. So Robin, what questions do you have?
We have a bunch of questions, actually.
Cool.
The first one is, can you please clarify what you meant but when you said do acquisition if time allows?
Okay, so again, if you're going to sell the business in the next year, it probably doesn't make sense to do an acquisition because there's not enough time to buy it, digest it, and actually make money off of the deal. You're still going to be paying out for that deal. But if you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 years or more until you're exiting, I would encourage you not just grow organically. So we're going to try and increase our sales by 10 or 15% year over year, but also go and look for businesses to buy. Now, a lot of business owners get stuck with that. We can help you. We've actually got a whole process for how to figure out what kinds of companies are right for you to buy, and diagnostics to get there. But buying businesses is the other side of the sale transaction. And by buying businesses, you get a lot of insight into what that buyer is going through, which will help you greatly when you get ready to sell.
Perfect. Another question we got is that this person is looking at merging with 2 friendly competitors to create a more sustainable and attractive or larger company for sale and exit in the next 5 years. Do you have any suggestions or ideas about what to look for or what to avoid?
So first of all, the first thing that comes up for me there is who's in control. If you've got multiple people at the owner table, you can divide it up by shares, but if you got 3 owners and you divide it by shares, 33, 33, 33, nobody has control. And then 2 can line up and overcome the third. So then you probably need governance documents that define how you agree and what you do if you disagree and how you get to make those decisions. And you better make sure you can live with those terms. The other thing that I would suggest is that as you look at who's coming in, you get clear who's bringing what to the party. So who's bringing money, who's bringing resources, who's bringing expertise, and make sure that you're not doing all the work for a couple other parties to come to the table and benefit, but they're not contributing that much.
Perfect. Are the requirements for sale any different for like tech companies versus manufacturing versus retail? This person has asked if you could speak to multiples for tech companies and what the appetite is right now, understanding that COVID has propelled a lot of online services.
So I think there are a couple of markets that have just blown up right now. Tech is one of them. E-commerce is one. Construction is one. I mean, they're having a great time right now. And if you're in those markets, this might be a great time for you to look for either companies that are in that sector and the owners are burned out. They're at that end of the baby boomer cycle. They've run out of resources. You might be able to pick them up and bolt them onto your business as an acquisition. And you also then want to think about the timing to sell. Is it a good time to sell when it's an up market? Usually in an up market, there are buyers coming into the market looking for opportunities to buy. In terms of multiples, the multiples we'll get into more on our valuation seminar, but I will agree with you. There are multiples by industry. There are also multiples within an industry. So are you a break fix firm or are you an AI firm? An AI firm is going to have a much higher multiple than a break fix firm, for example. And so are you, regardless of the services that you have today, can you move yourself into a set of services that do have a higher multiple? And then the other thing we will talk about with the next webinar is the valuation is a function of both cash flow and size. Size and scope do matter, but we'll get into that next time.
We have another question. If I'm looking at exiting a business in 14 years, what should I be doing today to prepare for that day?
Okay, build your, so first of all, decide how much you want the business to be worth and work backwards from that and build a plan to help yourself do that. Build your management team, lay out the size of the business. So the business needs to be this big by the time I'm ready to exit, this size of revenue, this many employees, this much net income, this much strength on the balance sheet, debt free, absolutely. and this much command of a particular market. So again, generally, most small businesses are not market dominant. You don't want to be market dominant because that puts a bullseye target on your back. You want to be a player within a market and a leader within a market, but not necessarily the biggest player in that market in most cases.
Great. I'm sure we'll cover this in the valuation webinar, but how much value does a great credit record bring to the table?
A great credit record, that's a really good question. A great credit record is usually an indication that other things are going well. So the business is well managed, it's profitable, it has successful customers, it's efficient, it has good employees who aren't wasting resources. And so it's an indicator of other things that are going well. It generally would, my bet would be that it also means you got a good set of financials to show somebody. And I would, again, work on that as a strength in your sale portfolio.
Perfect. I have actually a follow-up to the 14-year exit plan question.
Okay.
This person asked, is it worth hiring you today for planning that day 14 years from now?
Maybe. And clearly, what we do right now is we do help companies exit, but the most of what we do is we help companies grow and develop. And the reason I said maybe is I don't know anything about your situation and what your needs are, but I can tell you we will put in about 10 hours of free consulting to help you and us figure out what it is that you need and whether or not that's a fit with us. We talk to 1,000 companies a year. We end up working with a couple handfuls. For us, it's not about converting everybody to a client. It's about finding the right company at the right time for the right reason, and then helping everybody else figure out what it is that they need and helping them find that. So I'd love to talk to you. Please make sure to let us know who you are.
Perfect. We have a couple more questions. So I recently read A Company of One, which is about highly distributed teams and does not advocate building so many teams as staff. How is this model viewed, and where one has many contractors and is lean on full-time staff?
So it helps with profitability, but it may help with profitability, but you have less control over the assets, and it makes it probably less valuable as a sale asset. You got to really think about that one. So what are you selling? You're obviously selling your connections to independent contractors. What's the likelihood that a buyer could actually just go to them and hire them without buying you? So how can you keep that group of potential problem solvers or doers private until after the sale is consummated? And again, if I'm a buyer, I'm either looking for customers, I'm looking for employees who can do things that I need arms and legs and expertise for. It's kind of a mixed bag in there, and be careful.
I think this is a good follow-up question. So someone else asked, what are buyers most interested in, the people or the money or the contracts? If they are in your business and have staff, are they buying your people or your contracts and your contacts?
It depends. It depends from buyer to buyer. And this is where you also do want to match up what you're good at and what a buyer's weak at. So as you do that market research and you look for buyers, so if I'm really good at sales, you want to find a buyer that potentially is stalled or looking to grow sales but doesn't have the resources in sales and marketing to get it done. If I'm really good at operations, I may want to look for a buyer that's actually really good at sales and marketing, and they're looking for other markets for their customers to get into, so more things to sell to their customers. So you got to get to know each buyer candidate, and you got to know yourself.
A couple more questions. When is an early stage company attractive to purchase, and what kind of buyer might that attract? And early stages in like 4 to 5 years old and still growing.
It's doable. It's doable. You got to just look at how much, what is it that you're going to sell? So are you going to sell the concept? Are you going to sell some proof of delivery. We've actually been able to make this concept work. I do think most deals are done either on cash flow or the potential for cash flow. And if you don't have a lot of cash flow yet, then the deal is probably going to be more venture money, which they may or may not want the whole company. They may want to put a toe in the water to see how things work. The more that you can prove there is cash flow and there's more to come, the more valuable your business will become.
Great. So my financial advisor talked to me about getting a valuation. When is the ideal time to get one? And do small businesses really need them?
So I would recommend, so there's lots of different kinds of valuation suppliers out there. What you don't want is you don't want a 3-line email that says your business is worth X. That's not a valuation. I've seen a lot of them thrown around like that, and I think that they're pure crap, if you excuse the term. And I'd be very careful. I'd ask anybody that you're talking to for an example of what evaluation looks like so you can compare it. If you're early on in the business, you want to use the valuation as a baseline and a tool to understand what to improve in the business. So you also want to see not just what's the value of the business, but what are the KPIs for the business. And that's actually when we went out looking for a valuation tool, that's what we focused on, was finding the reporting behind the valuation, the KPI tools, so that we could say to somebody, either a potential buyer or an owner who's looking to develop the business over time, here's what you got to concentrate on. Here's where you're doing as well as your peer group. Here's where you're not doing as well as your peer group. Here's where you could improve performance.
Great. And this is probably one of my favorite questions, but how do I talk to my parents about their exit strategy from the business?
We actually just had one of those. So we talked to the next gen and suggested, let's get a conversation going with mom and dad. Why don't you just ask them if they're willing to have a conversation? And if you want us to sit in on the call, we're happy to kick the conversation off. You want to have somebody at that conversation who's going to provide facts and information about how things work and how things work successfully or go off the rails if they do. And a lot of times what I find is that the next gen has a lot of assumptions about what may or may not really be going on in mom and dad's head. And it's helpful to get it out on the table. And sometimes an outsider can bring a lot of that out.
Great. And then the last question was, what role do we play in kind of the buy sell situations?
So it's different for every customer. We oftentimes do start with a conversation with mom or dad or the kids or the employees or whoever is involved here. What's everybody trying to accomplish? We oftentimes we'll get a call out of the blue. Could you get a valuation done for me? I'd like to know what the business is worth. I've had somebody call me and talk to me about possibly entertaining an offer. I'd like to know what I'm working with. So that's a great way for us to start. And then from there, we take it from there into, if it's time to transact a deal, we will work with the owner on, okay, who's on the team? Who else do we need to add to the team? And how do we find those experts? What tools are in place? What needs to get built? How much time do we have to build? So actually working our way through that timeline so that we're clear as to what we can or can't get done. And then the other thing that we will do is we'll work the company through a development process to actually fill in the holes.
And we did actually just have one more come through, and then I think we'll cap it. What range of companies, so revenue or staff, do you deal with as either sellers or buyers typically?
Okay, so our target market where we do our best work is companies that have under 300 employees, under about $30 million of revenue, and that spectrum on down. And typically at the lower end, about 10 employees or around $1.5 million, $2 million of revenue on the lower end. That tends to be our best range in terms of where we're able to be the most effective. And I would say that our concentration is somewhere in the middle in that 5, 8, $10 million revenue range or the 25 to 100 employees. And that's just because that's where a lot of companies are, and that's where owners are asking a lot of questions.
And I would think, just to add to that, certainly when we do valuations with existing clients and they're looking to acquire businesses, that we do a lot of small acquisitions also with them as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when, yeah, if you're a buyer and you're in that range, but you're looking at, let me bolt on a few 500 or $300,000 companies, we can help you with that too. We'll help figure those puzzles out all the time.
And that's it. That's all our questions.
Okay, great. Thank you all for today. I really appreciate you coming. I hope we get to see you again. And everybody have a safe and healthy week.
Thanks, everyone.